It's Peter Brown.
Hi, Peter Brown. Hi.
Yes.
Hi, this is Maria. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Maria.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
The very same to you. Thank you.
No, well, I'm always very keen to remind people of how important Brian was.
Yeah.
And a lot of people in history do not know, how significant a player he was. And they don't really know enough about him. But I mean, he was a very special person, and as his best friend, and I was really fond of him. He was a lovely man. I would think it's rather sad that that he didn't live, and he isn't remembered as well as he should be.
Yeah, it's. So, what did Spain mean for Brian? Do you remember any remarkable anecdote that happened in Spain? I suppose there will be thousands of them, but something special that you remember?
I think that he was attracted to it, and I think that the bullfighting was very, you know very well. I mean, with bullfighting, you either like it or you don't.
Yes.
There's no middle ground. You love it or you don't like it. And we learned never to try and teach people because they either like it or they don't want it. But so Brian clearly, and I don't remember how because I wasn't there the first time he went, how he became in love with this. But I think he liked the idea of what everyone likes is the man and the animal.
Yes.
And that challenge between the two. And I think he was very turned on by the whole idea and the risk and the bravery and also the bull, even though it gets killed, is admirable and wonderful. So I think that's what turned him on. When he came back to England and said to me, "We must go next year. We must go. You will love it." And so then I went and. He explained it all to me, and I got it, and I loved it, and it was. But the thing is, you must remember, Spain in those days Franco was still the president.
Yeah. Yes. Very
so
difficult time.
it was another age.
Yeah.
And I was fascinated by it because, first of all, when I grew up, I was always a rather left-wing person. A socialist. So I sort of didn't approve of Franco. And I said to Brian at one point, I want to go to Spain with that awful man as president and everything. And Brian said, "Oh, take no notice of that. Come.
Yeah.
So I went, and what was fascinating, of course, is that I saw Spain in a sort of time warp.
Yes.
Because nothing really changed since the 30s.
Yes. Yes.
So the Spain of 1964 was really like being in the 30s because nothing had changed. Roads, everything was there the same.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of going back into this time warp.
Yeah.
You understand when you say time warp?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
You
so that was
the past, really.
Yes, but it was actually, So then, of course, we saw also the difference between the Ordóñezes and the Cordobeses. The difference. This was a time factor. Cordobés brought a different thing
kind of people
to bullfighting.
I didn't know that. Really? Wow.
Well, because in the Ordóñezes, and not just Ordóñez, but he was the great one, and came from a family of bullfighters, and he was of the old school and it was like ballet.
Yes.
Where you moved and where you didn't move, and then of course Cordobés came along, and sort of made it more exciting, but less formal.
Which was the most satisfactory moment that you lived with Brian?
Oh.
You lived so much.
Yeah, well, I think some of the nice areas were in fact going to Spain. I mean, we were on our own, just the two of us, in a country we didn't know and we didn't speak the language. But we had a love of what we saw with the bullfighting, and of course we were very lucky because Seville, that the feria of Seville was like 10 days long, and we lived there, and it was we became part of it. It was lovely and it was wonderful. The food was wonderful. The people were wonderful.
The Savile Theatre, when he got that theatre, I suppose he might feel as a dream coming true because he always loved theatres and he had been at RADA to be an actor. What did he mean, this theatre, for Brian? Because it gave a lot of problems also.
Well, yes, but the thing is that, you're right. I mean, he bought the theatre or he leased the theatre, actually. He didn't own it. He leased it. And then he sponsored plays, newly written plays, that probably would not have been performed if he hadn't have underwritten it and said, I like it, we're going to do it. And Arnold Wecker, who was a new playwright of those days, he did one of them. He did James Baldwin, the American playwright, Amen Corner, and those are the kind of things that were different, which were very, very good plays, but they would have had problems in getting onto a London theatre at Brian's help. And then what he did also during the summer is do a Sunday night with the music people, the Four Tops and all that kind of thing.
And why gave problems? Because such a fantastic people performing, or I can't imagine how it could lose benefits with all this. What's difficult to run?
No, it wasn't a problem really, but it was just, it was, with all of the theatre, it's always a risk, but Brian had made a lot of money, so he was prepared to make the risk because he thought it was important from an art point of view.
Yeah. So, Brian being...
and the weekend that he died, on that Sunday,
I know.
It was Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. He was going to attend. He said Bramwood he was going, right?
Yes. And Jimi Hendrix was performing that weekend. But we weren't going to attend because we were in the country.
Yes.
Brian came back unexpectedly. And actually I found that when I got back that day, I found that a lawyer, Brian's lawyer, had told them that Jimi Hendrix, that he couldn't perform because it would be inappropriate for Brian because he had died that day. And I countermanded him and said, yes, no, that's not right. He's going to. And as a result of that, Jimmy and I became very good friends.
The level of stress during '66 made Brian fall ill. It was Japan, Philippines, John declarations with Christy Will Go, we're more popular than Jesus, and all the problems with the merchandising company. So when the Beatles declared they would not tour again,
and the Philippines.
Yeah, Philippines after Japan, of course. So when the Beatles declared that they would not tour again, Brian decided to sell the 51% of NEMS to Robert Stigwood. How was taken that decision among you and the rest of staff in NEMS, and how it was taken, that decision, by the Beatles?
I think I said it in my book. You read my book?
Yes, of course. I got it here. And in special.
Yeah, right. What happened was when Brian, there's some things that I can't answer because I don't know.
Yeah.
I think I say in the book, Brian and I were going, it was one Saturday night in 66. And I remember it was winter because it was cold. We went to see a friend of ours called Chris Stamp, who was a manager of The Who. And staying with him then was Robert Sigurd. And that's when we met him. And we liked him. And he had been it's quite interesting because he'd been a record producer and done quite well. But he had, his company had gone bankrupt. And so there's no business and everything. And so we liked him, and he knew the business and so forth. So I was very worried at that point of Brian's health. I didn't think he was in good shape.
Yeah.
And we had a large company. The Nems Enterprises was a big company with a lot of artists. And the whole idea was Brian had a separate office, different place than the other office, the major office. And it was just Brian and me and a secretary. And we did that because Brian wants the Beatles and Scylla to be able to come to the office without a problem with all the other things. So it's a big office. So we were doing that, and that really, but the problem was how to run the other company. Because Brian was just concentrate on the Beatles and Scylla. The other part of the company was run, but there was nobody really in charge, senior person in charge. And so Brian and Robert went off for a weekend with a friend of Robert's who was a financier to Paris. And they got on very, very, very well. So the idea came up that Robert could be a candidate to run the Nems Enterprises and sell him a piece of the control of the company. But it would, he didn't tell the Beatles about this or Scylla. And so then of course Brian died, and Robert, who I liked and who I had encouraged Brian to employ, because Robert came in as the managing director and he was looking after everything except the Beatles and Scylla. I liked him and I thought he was doing a good job. Brian almost immediately started second guessing him. You know that term, second guessing. And I said, Brian, leave him alone, because you can't expect somebody to come in with any talent and do it exactly how you wanted it to. Let him do it the way he wants to do it. And I thought that was a very sensible thing. And so that's happened. And then, of course, Brian died. And then Robert, they wanted to move in on what the talks about. And Robert came to me and said, the Beatles don't know about this, Scylla doesn't know about this. You are closest to them. You have to convince them this is a good idea for us to take over.
Yes.
And I said to him, I can't do that. He said, why not? We get on very well together. You like what I do. I said, yes, I did all of that, but that was when Brian was here as the balance.
Yes.
With Brian not here,
it's different.
I don't think I can suggest to him that you take over everything.
Yes.
And so he was very angry with me and didn't speak to me for like 18 months.
And in May '67, he checked under medical care at the Priority in Richmond to induce some sleep because of the problems he had with those upper and downer pills and depression. By that time, it was about to launch the Sgt. Pepper's, and you brought him a copy of the album, which he listened for the first time on his bed in the Priority.
Right.
What do you remember of that moment? He was happy. He was how it was.
No, he's very, very happy. He's very happy, and he obviously realized how special and unique it was, because it was unique in the fact that it was different. totally different from previous stuff. And it was so different, we were not sure that it would work, nor were the Beatles. I mean, we weren't 100% sure that it was, the fans were going to like it because it was different.
Really?
But of course, yeah, there was a little nervousness about it. But their whole attitude was, we must progress. And so that's what happened. So then he wasn't well at all, so I was in charge of launching the Sgt. Pepper, which we did at his house, with the photography and at the with the media.
Yes.
And of course the rest is history, Sgt. Pepper.
Yeah.
But the reason for that we were in that house was the fact that my other close friend, my other best friend, but besides Brian, but not as close as Brian, was John Pritchard, who was the maestro conductor of the Liverpool Philharmonic, Glyndebourne Opera, and everything. And he had a house in Essex near the Glyndebourne Opera, which I used to go and stay at the weekends. And I had become concerned that when I went off for the weekends, what Brian was going to get up to.
Yeah.
You know, looking for boys and all kind of thing, and trouble and drugs and so on.
Yes.
So one time that I was in Sussex staying with John, we read in the glossy magazine, I said to John, I said, I really want to find a house and to get around here because it would be near to you for Brian to come down to, because I want to get him out of London at weekends. So John said, well, let's look at it in Country Life, and we opened the magazine, and we saw in the magazine an advertisement for a house, which said it was on the road to Rushlake Green. It didn't give the address, it just had on the road to Rushlake Green, which was the next village to where we were. So we got in the car and we went on and we found it.
Yeah.
And it was a lovely house. And I went back to London and I said to Brian, I saw a house for sale the other day, and it's really nice. It's in Sussex, and I think you're going to have a look at it and consider buying it for as a country house. He said, oh, okay. I didn't expect him to be that positive. And he said, yes, okay, well, let's go on Tuesday. I said, I can't go on Tuesday because I had meetings. So he went home to see it, came back and said to me, I'm going to buy it.
Wow.
Always was like a terrible surprise to me. I thought, and so he bought it, and then he spent time, renovating it and furnishing it and all those kind of things he loved to do. This was in the autumn of 1966. And so he had the house. So he bought his house, and that's where we were, and that's when he left. But it was a lovely house, and he liked it. And I got a lot of pictures of the couple of weekends before that, when the Beatles came down to stay, because Brian asked them to come because we wanted to talk about the future. And there's pictures Brian took, which I have, of them in the garden, lying out on the chaises, and I'm in the pictures. And that was it.
Oh, okay. Thank you for your time. I don't want to steal very much of your time because you are very busy, I'm sure. And
it was very nice to talk to you. I'm very impressed by your knowledge.
Well, the impresses me because this is very honored. You know what? The first book I bought when I was 14, it was your book, The Love You Make.
Oh,
really,
right.
And I promise I have a lot of books, but this one, which I have here on my side, beside me, is the most special book for me. Even if I am a collector, I'm a collector for 30 years, but this book is so special. Really, I promise.
It happened, you may know this, but it happened because I had already left, I've got long since, and I'd even left Stewart, and I was in California, and I was moved into the movie business, which I didn't really like. the Beatles kept in touch with me, especially John and Paul, and they were always getting irritated by books coming out, which were about them, which were very inaccurate.
Yeah.
And I said to them, the reason they're inaccurate is that these people don't have any original sources to talk to.
Right.
Because
right.
we are like family. We don't talk to people outside the family about what happened.
Exactly.
And I said the problem is going to be in the future is that these inaccuracies are going to be repeated till they become fact.
Exactly.
And I said that's the problem. And I don't know how to. They said, well, we have to resolve this. How are we going to do this? So I, in the end, said, listen, if you help me and support me, I will arrange to write this book. But it's not got to be my recollection. It's got to be your recollection, your wives, your friends, and everything. Yeah. You have to encourage everyone to communicate because we all know that people remember things differently.
Yeah, true.
If you speak to somebody what happened 10 years ago, you get different versions of it. So if I go this and I record all of your interviews and your wives' interviews and your friends' interviews and so on, then I can put together what seems to be the truth if 2 or 3 people agree on the same story.
Yeah, thank you very much, very, very much, and have a nice summer. Okay, very much.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.
It's delighted. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.